Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Today we're really rather fortunate. This is a particular rifle I've wanted to do for a really long time, but they're not very common. I want to thank my buddy Henry over at 9-Hole Review for loaning this rifle to me for me to be able to do a review on this. What we're going to be talking about today is the Daewoo K2, which is basically, since the 80s and still to this day, the standard issue rifle for the Republic of Korean Army. Go back in time a little bit. After the end of the Korean War and the establishment of the parallel, we had the Republic of Korea Army, or the ROK. They were originally equipped with World War II era weapons, M1 Garands, M1 carbines, grease guns, and so forth. And they wanted to update to a modern military-type rifle. So the ROK was able to get a license from Colt to manufacture M16A1 rifles. And, the M16A1 rifle was ideal for the stature of the Korean soldier and so forth. However, the license that was acquired for the Republic of Korea from Colt was rather expensive. Not only was it rather expensive, it was also not for export. It was too expensive for them to make enough rifles to equip their military, let alone with them being able to justify keeping the machining going to make for any other countries. So, like many countries, they wanted to go ahead and make their own weapon. They wanted their own home manufactured weapon that was manufactured in Korea, designed in Korea. And not only is it much more economical, it's a lot more national pride to be able to have your own equipment. Now, through that time they were manufacturing the Colt rifles, they were able to gain a lot of knowledge and experience on weapons production, weapons manufacturing. So it gave them some knowledge to be able to go ahead and start working on their own weapon. The first weapon that was manufactured and put to use was the K1 rifle. The K1 rifle was very interesting in the fact that it was the first Korean rifle that was designed and manufactured in South Korea. And what they did was they took a lot of different designs and put them into one. It's similar to what Kalashnikov did with the AK. The rifle had a lot of different features on it that were anywhere from M16 to Kalashnikov to FAL to AR-18. There was a lot of very excellent designs that were put into one. But the original K1 was a 10-point, I believe it was like a 10.3-inch barrel. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head. But it was a short barrel that was designed as a submachine gun to replace the 45 caliber grease gun. And that rifle was, and still is to this day, the only non-M16 or AR-15 rifle in the world that utilizes a direct gas impingement. So the K1 rifle was designed as a submachine gun, and it was used mostly by special forces and people who couldn't carry a full-size rifle. Now the K2 development, which is the piston gun that we see here, that was sort of designed in parallel, but the K1 was adopted first. As we go down to, I would say, probably the 80s, the really early 80s, the M16A1 was in use. Then with the adoption of the K2, the rifles were pretty much, the M16s were decommissioned and they were put into use with reserves and then eventually phased out for a full Korean manufactured rifle. So we're going to talk about this rifle. And as I said, there's a lot of other weapons that are designed in this. We go to the front, we have an M16 type barrel. We have a FAL type adjustable gas system. We have a Kalashnikov long stroke piston. We have an M16 7-lug bolt. We have a Stenag M16 magazine. We have a selector, which can be manufactured either in safe semi-auto or safe semi-auto and 3-shot burst. We have the folding stock of the FAL. We have M16 type sights. We have a 950 hitting charging handle. We also have a receiver set that's very similar to the M16 in the way that it opens and pivots. So the trigger mechanism on here also is very much M16 type. It's not the same. So when you have the ability to take all different successful rifles, take the best pieces that you see from each one, and to put them together to build your own, quote, ultimate rifle. So let's start taking a look at this thing from back to front, and we'll see what we got here. First off, we have the stock. The stock is very much reminiscent of a FAL stock for as far as the way that it hinges over. Very durable and sturdy stock. This thing here, when it is open, does not move. Closest to the right, as you see it does not interfere with the ejection port whatsoever. So you can cycle the rifle, you can function the rifle, you can fire the rifle without any issue whatsoever. Engage the stock, you just pull back and we engage. All there is to it. Pistol grip has a little bit more of a rendition of the, I would say probably like the FNC. We look at the top, we have the bolt carrier group. Now you can see the handle on here is very reminiscent of that, I'd say like an FNC for as far as the round profile that it is. The receiver is 775 T6 aircraft aluminum. Looking at the rear sight, we have a peep sight, and we have adjustable for windage, as you see right here, and elevation on the side. We only have one aperture for long range and short range. It's the same one that's used. We go forward, we have a sight looks similar to that of like an H&K G3 type, but it is a non-adjustable front sight. So this is a fixed front sight. The lower receiver, again, it's very similar to that of the M16 775 T6 aircraft aluminum. You also notice the anodizing on here. The anodizing here is the earlier M16A1 type gray finish. Looking at the safety we have on here, the safety has safe and fire, and this is a commercial rifle. Now, again, if this was a military rifle, it would have a safe semi-auto burst or just a safe semi-auto. When you engage this, you flip down and over to the fire position. Now, you can also go the opposite direction. So you do a 180, so either way that you can do it. But it does have the safe and semi in the same positions. We have a standard bolt catch. Now, if you notice on this bolt catch, unlike the M16, you cannot engage it by pushing the lower portion of it. So to engage this has to be done from the magazine, but the bolt release works the same as that of any M16 type rifle. We want to take a look at the top here for an interesting feature. This rifle, even though it was in the 80s, was set up for optics. You have two screws here. Once you remove these screws, you're able to put a rail on here so you can attach any kind of an optic that you would so choose. The handguards are reminiscent of that of an FAL. You do have one bolt that holds the front. You do have two halves, and this is a left and a right half. As we move forward, we have our gas tube. And then forward, we'll see a 4-position gas valve. And the barrel we have here is magnetic particle proof tested. Now, this barrel here is a 1 in 12 twist. Now, when this rifle first came out, it was prior to the standardization of the M855 ammunition or the SS109 type ammunition. So the original barrels were a 1 in 12-inch twist. And then there was a retrofit program to go to the 1 turn and 7-inch twist. The Koreans had what they called their KM193, which is their 55 grain full metal jacket, 5.56 millimeter round. And then they also have, after the standardization for NATO for the SS109, they have their K100, which was a 62 grain full metal jacket. We do have a sling on here very similar to that of the FAL. Bayonet lug. What we have here is a compensator similar to that of an M16A2, but it's designed a little bit differently. Normally you would have a 5 flare on the M16A2. You only have 3 flares on here. Now normally on an M16A2, well in this case you would have 3. Your center or number 2 flare would be lined up with the center of the barrel, so you would have the direction of the gas going up. So the bottom, it would hold the recoil down and also prevent dust and dirt from being flown up, being brought up by the muzzle blast. What they do is they adjust it over further. So your first one is it's probably at 11 o'clock here instead of where it should be at 9 o'clock. What that does is on fully automatic is it draws the gas up in this direction to help with recoil. They weren't as concerned about keeping dust from flying up as they wanted it to assist with recoil. Now, as we said, we have an 18.3-inch barrel. And if you look at the iron sight radius on here, this definitely increases accuracy by having such a long sight radius. Chrome line barrel, 1 turn and 12. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look in the inside. Now, the weight of this rifle is 7.2 pounds. We have overall length of 39 inches with it extended. And now we have 29 inches. Now, granted, this is an 18.3-inch barrel, but it does give you a lot more compactness for being in a mounted position. So for disassembly, we're going to push in the disassembly latch here. Now, there's 2 different versions of this. This is an earlier version. The earlier version is what you see here. The later version actually has a lock on here, which locks it in position so it will not disassemble unintentionally. So we push forward, and as you see, it breaks open like that of an M16. We push in the front pivot pin. Comes right apart. Take a look at the lower first. As you see, there's no buffer due to the fact that this is utilizing a external piston. The spring is all inside the upper receiver. The trigger is very much similar to an M16, but it is highly modified. You will not find any parts in this rifle that are compatible with the M16. This is all a very unique rifle in all of its characteristics. Now, this is the neatest part about this rifle. As you see, this part here, this is a fixed ejector. Unlike the M16, which has the spring-loaded plunger, they chose to go with this because they found it is more reliable, which in many ways it is, because this is not going to rust in place. It's not going to get seized with gunk and oil where it's going to impede its working. So this was a very big enhancement as well, and it's very unique in this type of a rifle, especially with the kind of a bolt carrier it's going to have, as you're going to see. But this is a very unique aspect. Again, looking inside in the bolt catch, there's no way to lock the bolt open by manipulation of this unless you were able to pull the top forward, which is very difficult unless you have very, very small hands. And also, as you can see, for country's first attempt at a rifle, the machining is immaculate. Very, very well made. Again, we can look at the safety again. Safe position. Then we go into semi-automatic. But we can also go down like so. So you can do a full 360. We have a sling swivel. Obviously, because the stock is foldable, you want to be able to have your sling stay in the same position, so the sling swivel is attached to the receiver instead of the stock. We do have somewhat of a boss on here to prevent accidental release of the magazine. You see it's a round button instead of the elongated button like we have on the M16. This is a little bit harder to actuate than that of the M16. I do have to say that. You have a lot heavier spring in there, so it's not as easy. And as we talked, it takes a standard Stenag magazine, 20-30 round magazine. We did try these with PMags that work just as well. It worked well with Lancers. So we did try several different magazines in here, and anything that's modern will work with it. Now we're going to take a look at the receiver. So like the FAL, first we're going to remove the action spring. The action spring, as you can see, is very much that of an AK. A very strong, very durable spring. We're going to pull the handle back to the rearmost position. We're going to pull that right out. And here comes the bolt carrier group. So we have an AK-style piston assembly. But if you look at the bolt carrier, it looks like the front of an M16. You do have your standard 6-lug rotating bolt, standard type of extractor. But you will also see, if we can see that right here, you can see the cut in the bolt, which is used to clear the ejector. So that's one of the changes that was done into the bolt. For disassembly, it's very similar to that of the M16. For disassembly of the bolt, you need to push inward on the firing pin retaining pin, which is very similar to that of a standard M16. Firing pin will come right out. Now this is where it gets a little bit different. You can see that the cam pin has been changed. It's been cut back so you can remove it from where the operating rod and the piston system is here. So we're going to rotate the cam pins the same quarter turn. Now we pull the bolt right out. As we can see from the bolt, we have the same 7-lug system here, but you can see the cut in here, so it will make clearance of the ejector in the receiver. Looking at the extractor, very much the same as the AR-15 M16. We do have a spring as well as a buffer in the inside. But as you can see, this is similar to the M16. It is bank particle and proof tested. You do have your proof markings for bank particle and proof tested. But although it looks similar to the M16, it would not be compatible. Reassembly is the same as the M16. Insert your extractor pin. Drop the bolt into the bolt carrier. We want to make sure the extractor is facing the right side. We're going to line up the hole on the bolt with the hole in the bolt carrier. Drop in place. We want to give the cam pin the 1/4 turn. We're going to insert the firing pin from the rear. We're going to insert the firing pin retaining pin. This one's rather bent, so it probably should be replaced, but this is the original Korean parts, so I will let my buddies over at 9-Hole Review decide what they want to do with that. It makes it a little bit more difficult to install when it's bent like that. And that's all you have to it. And I will say this is an extremely clean system. I probably fired 180 or so rounds out of this thing. I didn't want to fire too much because, again, these are rare, and I was really, really grateful they were able to loan to me. This required very little cleaning. It definitely served that position as an external piston to make it clean. Now we look a little bit more forward. Get a closer look at the gas valve. Again, you have 4 positions on here, and that's engaged by using a projectile or a suitable tool. Usually you'd want to use a projectile for that. This tool is a little bit too narrow for it, but you do have that. Again, we have a close-up of the proof marks, K-D MP. Now, as we see here, the way the rifle, this is in the fully upright position. This writing on here would be a good example of the center bore. Now, with an M16A2, your middle flare would be in line here, and here it's not. You can see how we have the side, and you can see the enclosed bottom. Again, this is so it directs all gas up this way to help keep the muzzle down on fully automatic. 2 different ideas. One, for the U.S. military, it was more of you wanted to have flash suppressor capability to suppress flash, but you also wanted to eliminate the muzzle blast from going down and blowing up dirt, especially in desert environments and so forth. That was what the United States wanted. The Koreans, opposite. They were more concerned with using it as a muzzle brake for as far as assisting in recoil, keeping recoil down, which is why that's on an angle. You see the close-up of our bayonet lug. Now, due to the fact that the location everything is here, we can snap a bayonet on here without any problem. And the handguards, there's no reason to take these off, but you use just a straight-bladed screwdriver to remove the two-piece handguards. For reassembly, we're going to insert the bolt into the carrier. We have to make sure the bolt's in the unlock position. Now we're going to line up that notch, as you see right here. Take our non-reciprocating lever. Move forward. We're going to insert our recoil spring assembly. Make sure that's in the upward position. Insert the receiver. Install the pin. Now we push inward, drop down. There we go. That's all there is to it. Insert the magazine. As you can see that it does lock back on the last shot, and you can utilize the bolt catch to close. As we stated, the K1 was put into service prior to this one, the direct impingement version. This one here, between 82 and 83, had the XB-7 prototype that was tested by the Republican Korean Army, or the ROK. And it was accepted in that time period as well. It was accepted in 1984. And it actually was fielded in 1986. And this rifle to this day is the main battle rifle of the Republic of Korea. There is now a K2C, which is more of a modernized version of the rifle, which basically is the same rifle, but it has 1913 rail handguards and such, so you can put modern handguards on it. So you can put optics on it as well for as far as a 1913 rail in the back here. But oddly enough, they thought way back in those, in the 80s that optics were going to be an issue at some point, so they did put a provision on here so any rifle could have a 1913 rail put on it. But of course, that was before the 1913 rails was in the 80s. But you could manufacture the optic rail as much any way you wanted. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this thing out to the range and we're going to see how it shoots. I have to say this rifle was really a pleasure to shoot. I didn't know how I was going to like it, but for as far as fit, feel, it is excellent. Reliability was excellent. It launches your cartridge cases like an AK into the next zip code. The trigger is very, very nice on here. It's probably, this one's is 6.5 pounds with my military scales. Accuracy, I only shot it at out to 50 yards. The range that we had some issues out there with some mud, so we weren't able to go out any further than that. At 25 yards, doing basically a battle sight 0. This was as accurate as any M16. There was no accuracy issues I could claim at all. The ammunition I used was Federal XM193 and Black Hills 223 full metal jacket. Again, this is a 1 and 12-inch version of the rifle, so we couldn't use any of the heavier projectiles. And I didn't want to fire this too much. Again, this rifle was brought in during the 80s. There was only a few thousand of these brought in. There was not a lot of these guns brought into the United States. Unfortunately, because you had a lot of issues going on with the manufacturer, and then you had the importation bans, so there was not a lot of these brought in. For some reason, Daewoo had kept going with different names for this rifle. It doesn't really make much sense, but the last rifles that were to be imported into the United States were called the AR-100. What they did was they took a drill press and they machined out where it said K2, or whatever model it had on it, and then they restamped it AR-100, and then they re-anodized it. Or they were manufactured that way. Prior to being anodized, that was machined off and then restamped. But there were several versions of this rifle that did come into the country, and they're very well sought after. This is one I would like to put into my collection at some point. I was very, very impressed with it to that point. This rifle is extremely reliable. There's no question. By having a longer barrel, they didn't sacrifice accuracy by no means. Although the M16A1 had a 20-inch barrel, this was an 18-inch barrel, or wasn't that much of a difference. You have a longer gas system, so it was easier on extraction. You also had a lower cyclic rate on these too. M16A1, you're looking at anywhere from 750 to 950 rounds a minute, and more realistically, you're looking at 850 to 900 rounds a minute. And once an M16A1 would say get broken in around 6,000 rounds, you can be over 1,000 rounds a minute due to the gas port erosion. This one pretty much stays at around 750 rounds a minute, so it's a lower cyclic rate. That's your opinion on whether you like a higher rate or a lower rate. Very, very well made rifle. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to shoot this and to bring it to you to show you all the details on it. But anybody who's looking to get a excellent rifle, still Cold War era, this is an excellent rifle, still in service today. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please click like, please subscribe, and even better, share. Please consider going to Patreon and making a donation. We are at this point self-funded, and we want to keep continuing to bring you these, so please consider that. Thank you very much.